There's no one to watch the doctors. There is no one to force them to inform anything. And because they hold the level of credibility they do, there is no one to challenge them.
My name is Bonnie Burstow, and I'm chair of CAPA, Coalition Against Psychiatric Assault, which has organized this public hearing. I want to welcome everyone to Day 1 of Inquiry into Psychiatry 2005 and Day 1 of the psychiatric drug hearings. You say what you want to say. That you're not here to take a party line, you're not here to please psychiatry in what you say, and you're not here to please CAPA in what you say. This is your story, and you get to tell your story.
And that they were going to give me this drug that's going to slow down that process so I would become more normal. What they chose to give me was perfenazine. And then when they decided that the perfenazine, I didn't experience a lot of physical side effects. It made me incredibly dull mentally, slowed me down significantly physically. A lot of blurred vision, dry mouth. And then they discovered that the delusion they thought I suffered from wasn't really a delusion after all. It turned out to be a fact. And they then changed my diagnosis to bipolar affective. Now, they had me locked up, so they just kept going with this stuff. And the way they explained it to me when I said that I didn't particularly want to take these drugs was that if you ever hope to see the outside, you will take them. That dragged on for several years. With the amitriptyline, they actually sent me into what they call the hypomanic phase and had to increase the neuroleptic to counteract the hypomanic phase that they introduced with the amitriptyline.
You wanted to hear about the effects of drugs, the specific and the more general. Immediately on taking Largactil, which I couldn't pronounce nor remember, chlorpromazine it's otherwise known as, I had zombie-like effects, like, you know, the old walk like a zombie syndrome, dry mouth, which was pervasive, an inability to concentrate, couldn't organize myself. In 1981, I entered On Our Own, went off lithium. By 1982, I ended up in Queen Street. First of all, Branson again, then Queen Street, where I was bombarded with drugs over a period of 15 years, became a vegetable with no will to get better and a self-image that was totally destructive. I was having blackouts from Haldol. I was given Prozac, which when I was given Prozac, I suddenly, within hours, became unnaturally elated, going around hugging everybody, telling everybody that finally I had broken through and I was going to be a whole new person. And within a couple of days, I went into a suicidal low. And they kept me on the Prozac even after that experience. I didn't realize. I thought they'd taken me off. But I got access to my hospital records, and they kept me on Prozac for up to 9 months, even though it had debilitating effects on me. I was getting blackouts from Haldol, and then suddenly in 92 or 93, I developed a condition known as neuroleptic malignant syndrome, which was a near-death crisis. I was in much worse shape than I had ever been in my life. It was the beginning of manic depressive highs and abysmal low, which were conditions which I had not encountered before. I had been on a flat-out low where I couldn't cope, and I admit that I couldn't cope. But I had never had manic highs, and I had never had the abysmal lows where I felt suicidal. I had not been suicidal before I went into hospital and after the effects of the hospital. Last year, I tried to go off medication again, this time under the supervision of a doctor that was untrained in the 10% method, and his heart and his mind weren't in it. And while taking me off little bits of medication, all of a sudden he took me off a whole bunch of, well, I'd say 300 milligrams of Epival, which I was on for seizures. Although I hadn't had a seizure in a few years, I was on Epival. He took me off that all of a sudden, and I got very, very disturbed. And within a short time, he put me on more drugs than I had been on before that. At present time, when I'm an Effexor, Epival, and Risperidone, I have days of clarity and weeks and months of despair. But I have been trying to get off them, but try to find somebody in this city that knows how to get you off by the 10% method and knows what they're doing. They don't know. When you're in a condition that you're either manic or depressed, you want that drug. And whatever they tell you about side effects is immaterial to you. I think the best solution would be total withdrawal within a safe and nurturing environment, but that would require going out to some kind of camp or something like that where you're surrounded and you go off drugs.
I was started on medication at a young age. I'm taking medication right now, and it makes me feel dizzy, and it almost makes me want to faint, and it causes me a lot of weight gain. I'm obese. They say this, they say, if you don't take your drugs, we're going to take you in.
Who says that? The police?
The police.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what I'm saying, is that they threaten people. And
you will have to forgive me for any lapses in memory I might experience, as I was just a child of 6 or 7 when my experiences with psychiatric drugs began. I will be as accurate as humanly possible. In the mid-1960s, I was labeled with quote-unquote childhood schizophrenia. During this period in my childhood, I experienced physical symptoms, including numerous stomach problems, such as frequent vomiting, diarrhea, along with fatigue and unpleasant tastes in my mouth, such as rotten eggs, that type of thing. As well, I experienced frequent severe nightmares, including a sensation of smothering or being physically trapped. I am now 46 years old, and I have been entirely drug-free since 1980. My physical health is generally good, and I've found other ways of approaching the crises of life that, like everyone, I sometimes experience. Given my experience as a child and teenager, I would never again willingly put these substances in my body.
Do you think that you needed the drugs that you were given as a child? What do you think would have happened if your parents had pursued some alternate path other than drugs?
For one thing, there was a certain amount of abuse in my background, so I think that had a lot to do with it anyway. I mean, physical and emotional abuse. Fortunately, I wasn't sexually abused in any way. I think that lay at the root of it anyway, and like drugs are no answer for that type of thing. I mean, just needed to be treated generally better at home and at school, and just maybe somebody to talk to and like believe in me. I mean,
I've been psychiatric drug-free for 10 years now, but I'm still dealing with some of the consequences of my encounter with psychiatry. It's difficult to separate what are the consequences from the drugs and what are the consequences from simply the treatment and the way I was handled. My encounter with psychiatry started when I was 15, and it spanned over 3 years. Given that this is an hearing about the drugs, I'll just start by listing all the drugs that I was on that I can remember. The first one was Ludiomil, an old tricyclic antidepressant, and I was also given Ativan. Then I was put also on Prozac, Zoloft, Anafranil, Imipramine, Rivotril, Clonazepam, Haldol. With Haldol came the Chemedren, sertraline, and also for sleeping, Restoril and Imovan. The reason why I went to psychiatry when I was 15 is that after 3 years of sexual abuse by a martial art teacher, I couldn't handle it anymore, and I did not have a place to recuperate from my experience. I was given the diagnosis of possible entry into schizophrenia, and because they tried the Haldol and the Chemedrine. They never explained to me what the effect of Haldol could be. And I started having, actually I didn't have, I don't think, extrapyramidal symptoms from the Haldol, but I do recall it put me so out cold that what would happen is that the psychiatrist would come, or the nurse would come to check out my muscle tension, and that would scare the hell out of me. Even if I could not react with my body, I would get the fear sensation and I could not react. The reason why I'm saying that is that today I'm dealing with that. Today I'm starting to process these experiences 10 years later. Then it was decided I would be transferred to Quebec to be closer to my family and to have access to French language, French-speaking people. They decided to stop all medication over that transfer. Well, let me tell you that that night was hell. I can remember feeling sweaty, cold, shaking, having heart palpitation, having headache. When I arrived at the other hospital, I was not speaking anymore. The nurse just took my blood pressure and looked at me and she said, you must not feel very good. And I just shook my head, and they gave me sleeping medication, which alleviated the pain I was in, the physical pain I was in.
One of the things that I was hearing is that you were unhappy, upset, frightened as a result of abuse by a teacher. And we're not talking about, 30, 40 years ago. We're talking about a time when everyone knew that this is how people feel when they're abused. And nonetheless, and in those hospitals, it sounds like some people agreed you were abused and didn't question it, but nonetheless thought it was important to put you on these drugs. Am I understanding that right?
Yes. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't understand how they approached this case, except through the idea of biomedical psychiatry. What I needed is very simple. I just needed a safe place with people who could understand that I was sad, that I was angry, that I was pissed, and that I was feeling very confused with everything that had happened, and just give me enough time to get back on my feet. I'd mentioned yesterday my experience with Haldol. I'd like just to reiterate it, that the Haldol left me in a dazed state. When I was under observation, psychiatrists and psychiatrist nurses would come to test my muscle tone to ensure that I didn't experience extrapyramidal reactions that would require immediate intervention. Each and every time they came and touched me, I would have an internal startle reaction. I would kind of come out of it a little bit, but I wasn't able to react meaningfully. These laters, and to this day, when as recent as last year, came back as flashbacks in counseling and while I was receiving bodywork sessions after I started my own personal healing journey. One thing that comes up is that I got more information about side effects and about the possible consequences of drugs from people who were living with me on these units than the psychiatric nurses or the doctors. And the way I got information also was at one point just to take the CPS myself, to request it and to read the stuff. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. I did not know why they were using these drugs, but I kept using them and complying with treatment. My GP and I discussed about the medication I was on at the time. It was lithium, and he agreed to supervise me coming off. It took me about 2 years to get back on my feet sufficiently to take a full course load, and during that 2 years, things that helped me were starting to volunteer in a women's shelter, where my capacity to listen and be present to other people's experience was appreciated, and I got validation from hearing other people's experiences. Living in residence, away from family, away from foster home, any kind of supervised environment. Later on, learning meditation, getting body work, learning shiatsu, other holistic healing modalities, learning to touch, learning about safe touch, learning to be hugged, learning to return a hug, processing the traumatic experience that I had been through. Just getting a lot of love, validation, and support. That's it. I've been drug-free for 10 years now.
Well, you alluded to having a catheter in as a result of the problems created by the drugs, and you said you imagined that we could understand what that would feel like to somebody who had been attacked. Were you telling us that the experience was like the experience of rape, having a catheter put in?
Yes, and I can tell you, I'm going to be very forthright with you right now, that I'm feeling it now, as I'm sitting here, just mentioning it. So, this was like rape, and I think the drugging was also as a rape, too.
Because of my learning disability and my reading and writing, the kids were making fun of me in school. Very hectic. But the psychologist demanded, you get him put into a mental institution. He's mentally sick and retarded, and he needs to be put away for the rest of his life. So I was put up in Aurelia for 15 years.
I've gotten used to living scared, and even though you may not step on me, your system shows me you don't care how I feel or what I say, that I am to learn not to get in touch with my feelings and express emotion over the very real loss of a significant part of me and my life. And the people who insist on maintaining the status quo, instead of evolving, are only contributing to the problem, not realizing it is happening in our very backyards. And no drug will fix that. Thank you.
Fiona, thank you very much.
It's been a long time since I spoke in public, so forgive me if I'm nervous. But I wanted to speak about consent and informed consent, and ask the question, who watches the watchers? I think it's unfortunate that the psychiatrists in our society are given so much credibility that there's no need to set a structure over them to watch them or monitor their daily affairs. In my particular case, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was medicated in London, Ontario, with a cocktail of 150 milligrams of Zoloft, 7.5 milligrams of olanzapine, and 2 milligrams of Nosinam. And again, told that one diagnosis, post-traumatic stress disorder. When that report came back to me, then and only then do I realize that I was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia. Now, I disagree with the diagnosis. Nonetheless, at no time was I told of this second diagnosis. The doctor who diagnosed me with that told me that I was being medicated for post-traumatic stress disorder. He didn't inform me at any time that those drugs had a withdrawal. He didn't tell me a lot of things concerning my own health. Because he chose not to inform me, at no time was my treatment consensual. I had no idea what he was treating me for. Now, whether or not I agreed or disagreed with his diagnosis is completely beside the point. There was no way for me to communicate because I was denied the information. Since I was never told that I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, there was never any explanation as to why they withheld that information. I'm left to speculate, and speculate I do, but as for any explanation or acknowledgement of that diagnosis, that never came out. The only way I got to know was through the report that I demanded. I speculate, frankly, that they chose not to tell me because I would probably become uncooperative, disagree with the diagnosis, and refuse the treatment that they believed that I needed. That it was more important to keep me in the dark so that I would be compliant as opposed to informed and therefore a problem. There was actually a cocktail of 3 drugs there that I mentioned. Zoloft, which, by the way, has a weird side effect of wanting you to commit suicide. That was never disclosed to me at any time. Olanzapine, which also has a bizarre side effect of adult diabetes. that was never disclosed to me at any time. And Nozanan, which I don't know anything about, but I'm sure if I did, there'd be disclosure issues on that as well. And the difficulty, again, is it's not my responsibility to come up with the right questions to ask these doctors. It's their responsibility to up the information in order for it to be informed consent. They had no agreement. They nullified my treatment. There's no one to watch the doctors. There is no one to force them to inform anything. And because they hold the level of credibility they do, there is no one to challenge them.
I've had over a decade of interaction with most of the major psychiatric medications. I remain very concerned about their efficacy and long-term effect on my physical, mental, and spiritual health. I've always been terrified of their effect on my well-being and safety. I feel as if I have lost control over my natural self. I do not believe that as consumers we have the safest, most effective products to manage our mental health issues. I do believe that our choices are greatly influenced by politics, financial outcomes, and self-interest of our service providers. This is the 21st century, but we live in the dark ages of profit margins, control and manipulation, social stigmas, lack of resources, biased information, and ignorance from the lack of understanding and sound, knowledgeable data from which to base our treatment decisions. Making a decision is a very difficult task for me to do, but when the data I have to base my decision on is skewed in the interests of providers, ignorant stigma, political or social demands, or societal demands, and so forth, treatment options become a gamble with my life at stake. Drug studies, if they are attainable, often hold a bias. It is clearly known that pharmaceutical companies are centered around profit margins, and research and production are costly enterprises that require successful outcomes even when the product fails. How do clients become informed, especially when they are given medication that affects their ability to think and reason? How does one trust the information given to them? How does one become proactive when encouraged that just taking a pill will solve their problems? How are the global determinants addressed in the client's care? Is the client encouraged to be involved in their care? How do clients make a decision about use of medication when they do not have decision-making skills? How can the client's right to choose be maintained when the client is distressed and having difficulty in making a choice? Is the medication being offered as a quick fix to support a stressed medical system, or is it in the client's best interest? Are medications developed to enhance the client's lifestyle or for use of chemical restraint? How is it that